Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So a lot of big extensions have been handed out since July 1st of 2024, whether that was to 2024 restricted free agents or pending 2025 unrestricted and restricted free agents. So today I wanted to look at 5 of those deals that have aged very good since they signed that. Maybe we weren't that high, or maybe we thought that it was actually a bad deal at the time that it was signed. And since then it has skyrocketed up into good value, or at least solid value, as well as 5 deals that have kind of aged poorly that we thought in the moment were very good, but those players have not taken another step or have just regressed this season, considering we are halfway through this season. So we're going to be looking at 5 of those. If you want to go see, I think I ranked like all 35 of the big extensions back in like September. You can go check that out, but we're going to go through 5 of these. And again, these are going to be guys that have either risen or fallen. I'm not looking at like Seth Jarvis, who I thought, or Lucas Raymond, who I thought had very good extensions that they signed, or I guess deals considering they were 2024 free agents, but I thought they were great in the moment. Now they also look great. I'm looking at guys that I've massively changed my opinion on their deal. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. And up first, we got Joey Daccord, who signed a 5-year deal at $5 million right before, at the right at the start of the season. I kind of forget. I was pretty shocked by this, considering the fact that Joey Daccord only had 1 season under his belt of being like even an NHL backup. He really was like an AHL guy for the most part until he was 27 years old, and then just really popped off for the Seattle Kraken. He was definitely worth $5 million last season, considering he had a .915 save percentage, but I was surprised that Seattle just willingly gave him a 5x5. It is looking like that was the right decision, considering how good he is playing right now. He only has a .912 compared to that .915 last year, but his underlying numbers are far better. Seattle defensively as a team are decently worse this season than last. As a result, he's 9th in the entire NHL in goals saved above expected at 9.3. Compared that to 3.8 last season in 50 games. And yeah, at this point, it doesn't kick in until next year, but he's going to be, 28, 29 years old. If he can continue, he doesn't have to be as good as he is this season every single year. He's getting paid kind of like low-end, solid starter money. So good on the Seattle Kraken. We're going to talk about a different deal that maybe didn't age that well in a little bit. I guess I'm spoiling one of the 5 bad deals. But this deal is definitely looking good for the Seattle Kraken. They got to somehow move off Grubauer because they can't be paying both of them combined $10.9 million. But in terms of Daccord, this is a pretty damn good deal at this point. On the flip side of that, when talking about goalies, Jeremy Swayman's 8-year, $8.25 million contract is not looking nearly as good, considering he has been arguably the worst goalie in the entire NHL this season. His record is actually pretty decent. He's 10-11-3, but he has an .887 save percentage, 3.13 goals against average, and minus 12.5 goals saved above expected, which is the worst in the entire NHL. He's still very young. He's still adjusting to being the full-time starter in Boston, but you definitely gotta be concerned at this point, considering he never played more than 45 games in a season before you gave him this mega deal. I thought it was a solid deal. I didn't think it was some kind of steal, but there definitely was some concern about him taking over as that guy that plays 55 to 60 games. And at least right now, they gave him top 8 goalie money in the entire NHL, and he's playing like a bottom 8 goalie in the entire NHL. So right now, it's definitely concerning. Not saying it's some disaster like one of the worst, like a Philip Grubauer at this point. He definitely can still turn it around. His track record has been so strong, but it is definitely concerning. Dylan Gunther, 8 years, $7.14 million. I loved this deal in the moment, and I love it even more. I did not expect him to take a massive step like he has. Last year, he was sneakily putting up like 30 and 30 pace, only played 45 games. This year, came out of the gates absolutely firing, then kind of slowed down a little bit, but he has really refound his game in the last 14 games. 9 goals, 9 assists, 18 points in those 14 games. He has 16 goals, 16 assists this season in 33 games. Has been a massive reason why Utah is surging despite having all those defenseman injuries. They're playing great hockey right now. Him and Logan Cooley at 21 years old and Gunther 20 and Logan Cooley have been one of the best second lines in the entire NHL. The future is so bright with those two. And Dylan Gunther is easily a $7.1 million player this season alone. And again, it doesn't even kick in until next year. So they got this guy in his prime for only $7.14 million between the ages of 22 to 29. He's going to be amazing. He's probably going to be a 40 and 40, maybe even 45 and 45. Right now, he's like a 40 and 40 guy. It's insane that they were able to lock him up. Very smart by the Utah Hockey Club. Basically, the exact same deal was given out to Matty Beniers, though, but 7 years instead of 8, and it kicks in this season instead of next season. And this has definitely been a little bit concerning for the Seattle Kraken. He's still awesome defensively. He is genuinely Selke level, but he's only half a point per game yet again. If you're getting paid $7.14 million, you got to get me to like 55 points like he was in his rookie year. But that Seattle Kraken team had an absolutely juiced shooting percentage in terms of goals scored above expected. So at this point, it's looking like Matty Beniers is just like a Jordan Staal light. I'm saying a lesser version of Jordan Staal. Jordan Staal was around a 50-ish point, amazing Selke level guy. Matty Beniers looks like he might just be more the same. Not a bad player by any stretch, but it's $7.14 million. He's still young. He's still only like 21, 22 years old. But considering every single year he's at bottom of the entire NHL in terms of play driving and just offensive metrics, it is definitely concerning if you're the Seattle Kraken. You need Berkeley Catton to really hit on being that high-end offensive guy, because Beniers' ceiling appears to be just like a 55-point second line. So if he can be that, if he can get back to 55 points, amazing defensively, you can justify that at $7.14 million in terms of the cap going up. But again, back-to-back seasons, looking like that rookie season might have been a little bit of an outlier in terms of offensively compared to the last season and a half that we have seen from Matty Beniers. Martin Necas, 2 years, $6.5 million. It's only a 2-year deal, so it's hard to say that it's massively changed, but considering how massively he has improved this season, I think it is warranted for him to be on this list. $6.5 million is like okay second line money. He's arguably been a top 10 player in the entire NHL with 14 goals, 30 assists, 44 points in 33 games. He has been slowing a little bit in his last around 15 games, but that was natural. He's still been clicking around around a point per game since then. But yeah, his overall playmaking and just processing of the game, it seems like what he's doing is in slow motion at this point. Everything is finally starting to come together. We always thought that this guy had the offensive ceiling, just hadn't really put it together. He's putting it together. $6.5 million, an absolute steal for the Carolina Hurricanes, who are still high-level contenders. Also at $6.5 million and aging poorly is Quinton Byfield. I really like this extension because it was only $6.5 million for a guy at 21 years old coming off a 55-point season. It's looking like he might have just been a byproduct of Adrian Kempe and Anze Kopitar on that top line, because he got booted off that top line for a guy like Alex Turcotte and just hasn't been the same player. He only has 15 points in 34 games right now. It is definitely unfortunate. I still think that he has the tools. He just needs to find the toolbox. Freak of nature in terms of 6'5", the way that he can move. But at this point, it's not some kind of disaster deal. I think he's going to bounce back to a degree, but we thought that this was going to be a steal of a deal. Now it's just like, okay, he needs to take a step or else it might honestly be negative value. It's negative value this season. He needs to step up and continue to improve. Another deal that is aging pretty well relative to a couple months ago, the Travis Konecny 8-year, $8.75 million contract. I was higher on most people than this, but I still had it at like a B- kind of B, considering the fact that he never was able to stay healthy most seasons, hadn't broken even the 70-point mark in the season. Granted, the fact the last 2 years he was on pace for around like 38 goals, 39 assists, 65 goals, 65 assists, and 129 points in 136 games the last 2 years. So I justified it by that, but rightfully so. People were critical of this, considering it doesn't kick in till he's 28 years old. Philadelphia's in this weird spot where they're not really close to being a serious playoff contender, but also like they're not tanking, but they're not a serious team. So I understand the criticism, but considering how good this guy is playing right now with 16 goals, 24 assists, 40 points in 34 games, he's legitimately been like a $10 to $11 million player this season. So it's looking like the next 3 to 4 years, he can be a $9-ish million player. Yes, in the back half of this deal, might it age a little bit poorly? Perhaps, but he's awesome, and he's having yet another amazing season, and looks like he's even elevated his game more. On Philadelphia, the second leading scorer, he has 40 points, is Matvei Michkov, a rookie. After that, in third, someone only has 22 points. So basically the difference between him and the fourth leading scorer, he's doubling up on that guy. He has been an offensive machine this season and just carrying their offense to a decent record. In terms of aging bad, sticking in the Metro Division, Alexis Lafreniere. You got to be a little bit concerned at this point. Last year, 29 goals, 29 assists, 57 points You thought he's finally breaking out. Yes, he is playing with Artemi Panarin, but in his own right, he was playing very good. And then to start out this season, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 7 games. So Chris Drury was like, okay, another breakout's happening. We got to lock this guy up at 7 years, $7.45 million. Since then, him and, don't get me wrong, the entire Rangers on the whole have been ass basically since then, basically since like the first 15 games. But in his last 26 games, he has 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. That is not going to cut it for a guy that has a sizable extension kicking in next season. I don't think this is going to be some kind of disaster of a deal. I'm not trying to say that, but relative to what we thought when this was signed at the end of October, you thought his floor was a $7.4 million player. Now it's possible that maybe he just never fully turns into that guy. And even with Artemi Panarin, he hasn't been that productive. And Artemi Panarin's starting to get up there in age. I still think he can be a very good top 6 guy, but not sure how much of a steal this deal is at this point. The last one that's aging very well is Victor Hedman's 4-year deal at $8 million. With Victor Hedman, people are going to say that I called him some horrible player. I called him bad defensively the prior 2 years because he was bad defensively the prior 2 years. I didn't really buy it after the 2023 season with the underlying numbers, but he had back-to-back seasons of being pretty ass defensively. He appears to be all the way back. He was still great offensively in those 2 years, but now he is yet again clicking around a point per game. And after Tampa Bay really shook up their defense core this summer, he appears to be playing much better defensively, like the 6'6" wagon that we saw basically from like 2017 to 2021 is arguably the best defenseman in the NHL. I'm not saying he's the best defenseman, but he's playing like a top 4 to 7 defenseman in the entire NHL. So I didn't think this was some kind of disaster of a deal, but it did kick in when he was 34 or 35 years old, kicks in next offseason. There is still some aging risk with this, but it's looking like for at least the first 2 years of this deal, he can again be a $9.5 million defenseman. Maybe the last 2 years of that deal, it might still be bad. He'll be like 37, 38 years old, but he has definitely upped his game to where Tampa's probably going to get some surplus value in the first couple of years of this deal. And the last one that's aging poorly, Pavel Buchnevich, man, his first 2 years in St. Louis, this guy put up 34 goal, 52 assist, 86-point pace. Last year took a little bit of a step back, 27 goals, 36 assists, only 63 points. You thought it's just an outlier season. He's still only 28 years old. He's closer to that player that he was in the first 2 years. We're going to give him a 6-year deal at $8 million. This year, it's more the same like last year. He only has 9 goals, 13 assists, 22 points in 33 games. I'm still decently high on Pavel Buchnevich, the St. Louis Blues. I'm decently high on Pavel Buchnevich, but again, this is a little bit concerning considering this extension kicks in when he's 30 years old and you have back-to-back years now, or a year and a half of him just being a low-end first-line 60-ish point guy. I think that he can turn it around, but I was a decent fan of that contract when it was signed because I thought he'd return somewhat close to that guy that he was in the first 2 years. That guy might potentially be gone, and it is 6 years from 30 till he's 35 years old. It's a little bit concerning. So at this point, I think it definitely is aging poorly. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? Which contracts am I being too harsh on? Which ones am I being overly hyped on? And which other ones do you think could potentially fit this in terms of one's aging poorly, in terms of one aging good? Slafkovsky's an interesting one. I still think that he's just so young that it's his 3rd season in the NHL, and he still hasn't been like horrible this season. So I'm not ready to massively change on his 8-year deal at $7.6 million, but I can understand why you would maybe have that one in the aging poorly. But I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.